Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. Buckle up, as it's a long one, and don't forget to listen to the end of the story to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, guys, and please like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Several years ago, when I was 21, I met this fantastic British boy on an online game. He was in the process of finalizing his divorce to his then wife. I was super respectful, but when I found out the details of his relationship, even though it was coming to an end, it wasn't until after they were officially divorced and they had moved on that we began talking a bit more seriously about there being an us. After several months of video chatting, texting, emails at work, etc., we decided to meet up. I drove to Florida to meet him, and everything felt like a fairy tale from then on. I honestly believed he was everything to me. We moved in together after we started dating, and after a few months of living together, he expressed wanting to go home, which meant the UK. We worked things out financially, and we zipped off to England where we lived with his parents for a year. During that time, he proposed. I was over the moon. I said yes, and then we had to have our come to Jesus talk about our situation. In the end, we moved back to the US to complete his permanent residency, while living with my parents since he couldn't work at the time. However, during all of this, I was very blind to what was actually happening. In the beginning, his ex-wife had contacted me about how he cheated on her, etc. Being the typical girl in a new relationship, I figured she was just bitter and angry, and he perpetuated that lie with stories about how she was crazy. You know, the usual. During the course of our relationship, there were a few red flags that he was quick to have stories for. Oh, this girl I'm chatting with? Old friend. We're just catching up. Of course, this was a lie, among many others that I found out about after the fact. The biggest lie he told me was near the end of our relationship. He had a best friend named Cynthia, who he had gotten close to. Just a few days before my birthday, he told me that they were heading out to the mall to buy me a gift. You know, just for a few hours, and then he'd be back. He didn't come home until 5 a.m., when I was waking up to get ready for work. He claimed the car broke down on their way home from the mall, and that they had to call our mutual friend Kim to jumpstart the engine. Well, the mall closed at 10 p.m., and when I spoke to Kim about it, she said she met up with him just past 11 p.m. to help out, and that they were very drunk and touchy-feely, and that she felt awkward the entire time, and asked why I wasn't there. She said they both claimed they had asked me to hang out, but I said no. Lo and behold, on my birthday, neither of them had a gift for me. At that point, it was pretty obvious that something had happened, and with previous evidence, I was finally done with his BS. I gave him back the ring and informed my parents that our relationship was over. Keep in mind, I confided in my mother a lot. Growing up, we were very close, and I always went to her when I had an issue or was frustrated. She knew about everything, and I mean everything. I told my mother that I was contacting his parents, and I was arranging to buy his plane ticket back home to the UK, with my own money. As I saw it, he had cheated on me, and it was time to have him move out so we could both move on with our lives. At this time, I was 22, nearing 23. Wrong. My mother and my father decided to put their foot down and told me that I brought him back to America, so we needed to sort stuff out. They also refused to let him move into the guest bedroom. For the next 6 months, I lived in hell. He was verbally and emotionally aggressive, didn't respect any of my boundaries. I worked 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., and he was constantly up at 4 and 5 a.m. on Skype with new girlfriends and gaming buddies, being loud as hell, etc. The list goes on and on. It was awful. Just take my word for it. On top of it all, I was constantly arguing with my parents about it. They saw absolutely nothing wrong with what was happening, and that we needed to be adults and work it out. Nothing changed until I finally had a nervous breakdown and told them that if he didn't go, I would move out and take my $500 in rent and utilities elsewhere. They promptly agreed to let him move into the guest bedroom. However, he refused to move into the other bedroom. For the next week and a half, I had to argue with him about moving his things. I finally got sick of it and moved his crap myself when he was out on a date with Cynthia. We weren't friends anymore at this point, obviously. Once he moved into the guest bedroom, things were okay. I was able to lock myself away in my room when I wasn't at work, and I really just poured myself into my job and doing art on the side for additional income. It was a crappy situation to be in, but I was trying to make it work. Unfortunately, it only got worse. It became clear that my parents were choosing his side over mine. He said a lot of nasty things about me to them, and I got to hear all about them through them, in a "I can't believe you did this" way. My mother started leaving me nasty written letters under my door, and whenever I would confront her, she would say everything she'd written was true, because my ex-fiance had told her. I reminded her that all of this information she was getting was coming from the mouth of a lying cheater, and she was going to take his word over mine, her own daughter. Well, she did. When I had managed to save up enough money, I pieced out and moved out without a damn word to anyone. I had a friend several states away who was kind enough to let me rent out their spare bedroom, and that's what I rocked for a solid year before I met my current boyfriend and moved in with him. I'm in a happy, solid place in my life, and I'm almost 27. My ex-fiance still lives with my parents. In the time after we broke up until I moved out, he didn't have a job, and thus didn't pay rent or anything else. However, he did complete his permanent residency and is allowed to work. After I moved out, I didn't speak to my parents unless it was absolutely required. I called on Christmas, New Year's, Mother's Day, etc. I didn't give my parents an address either. I was fine with cutting all ties with my family, since it was clear they were going to support my jackass of a lazy ex-fiance. So that was just over 3 years ago. Yes, he still lives with them. Over time, my relationship with my mother got a bit better, but she's never apologized for what happened. That's okay. I don't expect one from her, but I won't make her a priority in my life. The other day, I got a random Facebook message from my ex-fiance's mother asking me to message him because he had a question for me. I was hesitant at first, but unblocked him on Facebook. I asked what was up, and he asked me about my TV and papasan chair. When we were living with my parents, I bought both of these things, and when I moved out, I left them behind because I didn't have room in my car. And I refused to make a second trip out of fear of dealing with him or my family. He said since he had been using them since I left, he just wanted to ask if he could take them, since he was moving out of my parents' house and into his own place. I said I didn't care. Honestly, I wasn't going to be getting those things back, and I really did not give two craps if he took them without my permission. That was the extent of our conversation. A few hours later, I get an angry phone call from my mother as to why in the hell would I give him permission to take the TV and chair. I said, to be honest, I didn't give a damn. I hadn't seen either of those things in over 3 years, and I wasn't that attached to them. If he was going to use them, so what? It's not like I was getting any use out of them. So then she went on a tirade about how he hasn't been paying rent since May, that he's knocked up Cynthia but left her for another girl. Surprising. His room is an episode of Hoarders Gone Wrong, etc. Also, while my mother was in the nursing home, she has failing health, and my dad was visiting. He threw a huge party my uncle came home to. My uncle comes over to make sure the house is okay while my mother is in the hospital or the nursing home when she has really bad episodes. I spoke to him, and he said it was close to 40 to 50 people who trashed the house, etc. The list goes on and on. My mother then told me I had to deal with my ex-fiance, since it was originally my idea to bring him around. Apparently, she and my father had been trying to get him out for months, but he either wasn't listening or said he would move out by a certain date, then never would. I told her to call the police and have him forcibly removed, since it's their house, and if they're kicking him out, they can escort him out and watch as he takes his things. She said no, that wouldn't do, and that I needed to handle this situation. This is when I absolutely lost it. I reminded her of all the BS I had to go through with him and her, and how in the end, both she and my father supported him and his words over me. They paid for everything he needed, such as clothes and cigarettes, and those aren't cheap. Catered to every need. Yet if I was a day late on my rent, because I was waiting for payday, all hell would break loose. I reminded her that he had cheated on me, and when I made it clear our relationship was over, they refused to let him move out of the house, much less my room, until I finally snapped and threatened to move out. I reminded her every letter she slipped under my door, of every nasty insult she flung my way because he had lied to her, etc. I said no. She made her decision when she chose him over me, and she needed to stick to her guns and get him out of the house if that's what she truly wanted now. It sucked getting that rude with my mother, but she had to know where I stood and the position she was trying to place me in. However, it's not as easy as that. My mother is very sick. She is constantly in and out of the hospital with heart and lung issues. She lives on an oxygen tank now, and any amount of stress can trigger a whole slew of issues. Her doctors have warned her multiple times that stress can give her a stroke, etc. I've already lost my grandmother to a stroke, so I don't want my mother to go the same way. A part of me feels responsible for the situation, since I don't want my mother to have to put up with him. After my conversation with my mother, I sent my ex-fiance another message. I told him that after speaking to my mother, I wasn't comfortable with him taking anything, including the TV or chair. I said those things were to remain there where they are, and he is not allowed to take them. I said this was my first and last message to him regarding the issue, and to resolve this as peacefully as possible with my parents. They deserved that much. To be safe, I screenshotted the message and sent it to my mother as well. I then blocked him on Facebook again. So my question is, did I handle this the right way? I feel incredibly bad that I don't want to do anything more for my parents, but at the same time, I also feel that they made their bed and have to lie in it now. If anyone else has gone through something similar, what would you do? Should I call the police for them? Should I make a visit? I'm at a loss since I feel like I've done enough, but not enough, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Any help or advice is much appreciated. Thank you so much. Jesus, who does this? Who chooses their child's cheating, manipulative, sponging loser of an ex over their own child? What the hell? Anyway, by prioritizing him over OP and continuing to let him live there for years after OP noped out, OP's parents have made it clear that they have more regard for strangers than their own flesh and blood, and OP is 100% justified in having nothing to do with any of them. The entire situation is unbelievable. Good for OP for building her own life away from them. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Tugboat Sheila says, they took the side of a man who treated their daughter horribly. Every time you begin to feel bad, repeat that sentence to yourself. If that doesn't work, perhaps looking up tenant laws for your area and texting them to your mother, father, uncle. Red Molly the Black says, your parents made this terrible, lumpy, damp, bed-bug-infested bed. Long past time for them to have a sleep in it. Gee, Mom, I'm so sorry you're having this problem kicking ex-fiance out. I tried to handle that 3 years ago when I actually had some leverage over him, and it wasn't acceptable to you. And now I don't think I have that power anymore. Good luck. Oh, and I'll be over at X time to get my TV and Papasan chair. If your mom is sick and on oxygen, that's sad, but it's not your problem. Deleted user says, honestly, your response, if anything, should be, is this a joke? Are you guys actually serious? I broke up with his cheating worthless butt years ago. You were the ones who chose to host him, to keep him over me. He's your problem. You deal with him. Good luck with that. Sorry you got stuck with such a crappy boyfriend and crappy parents. Background. I, 27 female, married into a very traditional family. I, however, am a gender egalitarian. To me, it doesn't matter who takes whose name, but I personally feel very, very attached to my last name, for reasons. So when I married my dear husband, 25 male, we decided to keep both our names. Children born to us would be hyphenated. Dear husband's family is not pleased. Situation. A year and a half of marriage later, dear husband's family, being super traditional and a little patriarchal, were very hurt by me not taking dear husband's last name. They decided to ignore my decision and continued to refer to me by dear husband's last name instead of my birth name. Among multiple incidents, my brother-in-law, 28 male, put my married name on a family group email. I decided to confront him individually about it. Perhaps he forgot. Perhaps he didn't know how to address me. So let's talk about it. I asked brother-in-law to change my name back to my birth name on his email, reminding him of my decision. I was very nice about it. In fact, all I literally said was, hey brother-in-law, could you use my birth name instead of dear husband's last name? You know I kept my birth name, right? Thanks, man. You're the best. A month later, I received a letter from him, telling me that I should change my last name. I'm going to include letter excerpts from the letter below, but my main question is, how do I respond? Am I being unrealistic by being a little upset? Letter excerpts. The reason I write this letter is because I care about you, and I care about dear husband's family. I write what I write in the spirit of kindness and prayer. In fact, I wouldn't be writing this if I hadn't prayed about it beforehand and felt compelled to write this. It's about your last name. Refusing to put dear husband's last name on yourself, for whatever reason, causes great heartache and pain to many of them. It also causes a lot of unnecessary awkwardness in conversation. When people see that you haven't taken that name, the assumption in society is that you two are living together and are not married. In the end, I really could care less about this whole thing. I'm not a dear husband's last name. I'm a different last name. He's married into the family. I kept my name. I don't really care what you decide to do. After reading this, you can be mad at me, forgiving of me, or accepting of what I have to say. And honestly, it won't affect me one iota what you decide. I believe that the whole subject is a petty and immature one. It isn't something that would cause such a big deal to anyone. However, I care more about my feelings and relations held by my family, of which dear husband's family take part in. The reason you should choose to take dear husband's last name is because it is kind to do so. It makes it so much easier to relate to you and removes all the unnecessary awkwardness I've previously described. I know that this decision is for you to decide and no one else, but resisting to take your husband's name in society and circles you interact with is a selfish one. And finally, hopefully you have felt a spirit of peace from this and not contention. I only strive to do what is right, and I try and show it in this letter. I seek to better myself every day and to lift everyone around me up so I can become more like my Savior, Jesus Christ. He is my whole example for everything and is the reason I make any decision in my life. So if this letter brought a bad spirit to you, I apologize, for it was not intended this way. I wrote it out of a spirit of love for you and dear husband's family. Okay, thoughts? Suggestions? I'd write back something like, I'm so glad you agree that my decision to keep my name is utterly inconsequential and no one else's business. Now that you've made it clear the choice is mine alone to make, I'm thankful we can all put this issue behind us. In the spirit of peace, first name, last name.